Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the On the Mark podcast. I'm excited about this phone call. We've been trying this for a while. He's on the other side of the United States. I'm down in Georgia where it's hot as Hades. You, Keith Bennett, are wearing a sweater right now, and I'm very, very envious, man. How are you doing? Welcome to the show.
I'm doing great, Mark. And first off, I just want to say, honored to be here. I've been listening to your show for many years now and have gleaned insights from yourself as well as all of the incredible guests that you've had on the show. So I'm just honored to be here. It's kind of crazy to think that I've come this far in my golfing career, and it's a lot of fun. But yeah. It is a cooler morning here in Seattle. It's been really hot. It's been in the upper 80s and low
Mhm.
90s. So we felt the heat ourselves. But yeah, got some overcast, and I
Oh,
think it's about going to top out around 75 degrees today if the clouds should part. So it's a cooler morning, but yeah, we're happy about it. It's been hot.
fantastic. Well, look, before we get to it, you're very kind. With all the accolades you stacking up and with all of the inroads you're making in golf instruction, I feel remiss that it's taken us this long to get to you. But anyway, I'm a rabid fan of golf instruction on social media. When I'm on airplanes and stuff, I just toggle back and forth and look at folks. And I found you, and I found all these cool videos with cool content. And you pitched a few things there that I'm like, yeah, we haven't talked about that in a while. But before we get there, um, tell the global audience a little bit about who Keith Bennett is, how you came to where you are.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. So a bit of a interesting route into golf instruction. I grew up in Vermont, so I'm from the East Coast, and I actually spent most of my kind of formative years snowboarding. So I was big into snowboarding. I did it on a pretty large scale. Was featured in magazines and some videos, and thought that that was going to be sort of what what my life would be with snowboarding. And as I got older, my brother David is a golf professional, PGA professional as well. He played at the University of North Florida and
Mhm.
is actually in their golfing Hall of Fame. And so golf's been in our family forever, and I always looked up to him in that regard, and wanted to do stuff that he was doing. So like as I got older and got more interested in the game, I started playing more. I started working at golf courses in the summer when I would go home, not snowboarding, and got really hooked on the game because I liked the solo aspect of it, where I could go
Yeah.
out on my own for hours on end just to a chipping or a putting green and just work on my game and kind of figure things out. I like that trial and error process of tinkering with things and messing about until I find the right solution. And that sort of really resonated with me, and I think that's what really hooked me. And then got into a little bit of competitive play kind of as a junior around like 16, 17. I didn't get into competitive golf till kind of later on, but then I played in some club championships and came runner up against the adults, and that kind of spurred me on to keep going. And at that time, I was thinking about going to college and what I wanted to do, and I was introduced to the PGA, PGM golf management
Uh-huh.
programs. I did some research, and I actually was still into snowboarding at the time, so I wanted to be close to the mountains. So I went to the University of Colorado, Colorado Springs campus for a year. But then kind of snowboarding sort of fell by the wayside for me, and I got more into golf, and I wanted somewhere with warmer climate. So I was looking around at some other schools and ended up at New Mexico State.
All right.
Um, and so better weather, more golfing opportunity year round. They had a nice university golf course that we had access to, and went down there, really loved it, really loved the program coordinator, Pat Gavin and Josh Salmon. And then I met one of my mentors, Henry Statina, who you
Yes,
recently had on
you've been on the
had
show.
on the show.
Mm.
Yep, exactly. And yeah, so I was able to walk onto the golf team down there. I just practiced every day and walked onto the golf team my senior year. So played 1 year of D1 golf, which was a lot of fun. I wish I had more years. And then graduated and started working up here in Seattle. My wife is from Seattle, so I moved up here and started working at a golf course called Aldera Golf Club, which is probably one of the top private clubs in the area. And just started, just expanding my skill set, meeting people, kind of realizing that I wanted to get into teaching side of it more than the golf shop sort of tournament and merchandising side of it. And split off from there and started teaching on my own at a 9-hole course called Glen Acres here in Seattle. And then about 3 years ago, I moved to Newcastle Golf Club in Newcastle, where I am currently. So it's kind of like the little 3 minute background on myself. But yeah, it's a different route that I took to get into golf. I didn't really start until I was later on, probably 15, 16, when I really got into it.
And now you're making a splash on social media with a number of really interesting videos and stuff that you're putting out. But where I want to kick this off is I think it might have been a story or something that I saw of yours, and it talked about your own personal journey
Yeah.
about lowering your stroke average. And I was
Yes.
like, this really settled with me, and I'll tell you why, and then I'll let you tee us off. Back in my day, I was a college golf coach amongst other things, and I had a very talented young player on my team. Now, this player could be anyone listening to this podcast or watching this on YouTube. And it was all there. All of the ingredients were there, and he would be going along great and then have a good round, and he'd be in tournaments and have like one bad round. And it was never, ever really fulfilled. But I guess that's the story of most golfers, right? And then he got into contention one time and he spilled it at the end, 71st hole or whatever it was. And eventually it was impressed upon me just to say to him, his name is Robert. I'm like, Robert, you got a big future in front of you. You're infinitely talented, but stop worrying about the future. Stop worrying about the win. All I want you to do is each tournament, I want you to lower your stroke average by 1/10 of a stroke. Just 1/10.
Yep.
He looked at me as if I was crazy. I'm like, consider that for a bit. If we play 10 tournaments, that's a stroke. So if your stroke average is currently 72.2, end of the year, you're 71.2, and you're keeping yourself in contention to win events because now you're eliminating that one bad day.
Right.
And he took me on. And at the end of the year, it turned out he won a few times, was an All-America, but didn't really do anything crazy special, but just kind of went about it a bit more professionally, I would think. So I tell that story to tee you up because a lot of folks want to lower their handicap and all this sort of stuff, but they don't really know about how to go about doing it. So start us there, please.
Yeah, I love that story. And my coach, Mike Dirks down at New Mexico State, was always trying to press upon us very similar type mindset when it comes to competitive golf. And I think we talk a lot about lowering the handicap. That should be the main goal for us golf instructors. And when our clients come to us for help, it's mainly to play better golf and enjoy themselves more out on the golf course. But I think that's a very broad topic. Like, okay, yes, I want to do that, but how do I go about doing it? And this is probably my favorite topic to talk about. I like talking about golf swing, but I think that there's so many more avenues you can go when you talk about getting out on the golf course and actually applying what you're doing and applying it to various scenarios. So yeah, I mean, what you alluded to is I posted on my Instagram story just some bullet points that I had kind of thought about on a car ride home, or things I was like, okay, I'm playing some of my best golf I ever have. I don't practice as much as I used to or would like to. Like, why is that? How am I playing better but not practicing as much? Like, where would that come from? And I jotted some bullet points down, and I started with saying primarily playing one shot shape unless I'm forced to do something different. And I think that was something that our coach always told us, but never really hit home until I got a little bit older and got more experienced in competitive golf. And I think that when you're out on the golf course, a lot of folks get talked into or convinced that they need to have all the shots.
You know what? I want to stop you right there, and I just messaged you. I'm sorry to ruin your flow because I remember it now as clear as day that you had these, and I should have taken a screenshot, but I don't have it. Anyway, so I'm going to let you guide us through these. But I love this because, you know what? I work in the pros, and when you listen to these pros talk after rounds, or when you interview them, you ask them, what was the key today? And you'll always hear them say, I made a lot of putts, and I had control of the golf ball. And they make a sound to all the viewers that you can gain control of this golf ball. And look, this is a myth because the ball flies through a moving medium. When it's the ground, it's out of your control. Okay, I'm sorry.
Right.
But anyway, so they make you believe that they can draw it and fade, hit it high, hit it low on command all the time. Right. And that just isn't the case. And it's almost a red herring that's sold to everybody. And I see so many golfers like, well, I've got to have the 9 shots. And me
Right,
as a
right.
golf instructor, with good players, I said, hit all 9 shots, high fade, high draw, the whole thing down to low. But the real greats I've seen, they hit one shape. Colin Morikawa's he said so before last year's Masters. He's like, I thought I had to draw the thing around this place my first time. I fell on my face. Now I've just realized I'm going to go with my cut shot. And he played way better. So I'm so glad you start us here.
Yeah, and Cam Smith said something recently too at the Open. He said, prior to when he played Open Championships before, he thought he had to alter his ball flight. He thought he had to hit it lower and run the ball along the ground to play links golf, and he didn't have any success. And then he said this year, obviously there was maybe a little less wind potentially, but he said this year, he just said, I'm hitting the same shots, trajectory, shapes that I do when I'm at home in Florida, and I'm playing much better. So I think we get fooled, golfers and people watching into this almost like romanticized version of golf sometimes, where I need to be able to shape it and alter trajectory and change spin. And yes, of course, the best players in the world can do all of these things when they're standing on a range in front of a TrackMan, or, when there's no pressure on. But you put them on the first tee of a round that matters, and they're going to go to their shot shape that is most comfortable with them. And I find that a lot when I go do playing lessons with people, and they want to show me the shot that we've been working on the range. Like, I want to show Keith that I've been hitting that draw, and then they set up for it and it doesn't come off, because it's not something it's inherent to them yet. And I don't want to see that on the course. I always tell people on the course, hey, this is a time for getting it done. This isn't a time for looking fancy or flashy. This is a time for going from point A to point B in as few strokes as possible. So if that means you got to aim up the left and play your fade, bordering on slice, then I want to see that, because I want to see more realistic of what you're actually going to be doing when you're out here away from me. I don't need you to prove something to me. And I think that comes back to people playing shots they know they can execute versus playing shots that they think that they should be able to execute.
Yeah, you're just stacking the probability in your favor if you go to what you're likely to do 7, 8, 9 times out of 10. I want to pivot quickly and first off say, folks, this Keith is so thorough. He's just texted me an image of the points. So I'm armed and dangerous and very impressed. How about this though? I think along these lines, I'm completely on board. But perhaps having an understanding, let's say I hit a fade, right? I want to straighten it, hit the ball farther. That's everyone wants to do it. But you're saying go to what you can do. But perhaps having the understanding of how to perhaps draw one, if you have to hit a low hook from under the tree or something, that is a necessary skill. Would you add to that?
Of course. Yeah. No, I'm always in favor. And I do this with all of my lessons. If people are slicing it, my primary goal for them is to get them to hook it, like absolutely, like draw it immensely, just to show themselves cause and effect. I think everybody needs to understand cause and effect. There is no one shot that's better than another, because I need to be able to slice the golf ball on command at sometimes during a round. And I also need to be able to hook a golf ball on command during a round. So neither one of those are better. They just suit the situation that's in front of me more, one or the other. And so understanding the path and face difference needed to hit a draw or a hook can, during a round, if that slice has gotten completely out of control, if I know what a hook element is with a face and path, I can introduce some of those hook feelings to minimize my slice, maybe turn that into more of a playable fade, or get myself to hit it a little bit straighter out on the golf course for sure. Because I use that stuff all the time. I mean, golf in my mind is just kind of, slices and hooks, and then you kind of try to find somewhere in between those. So yeah, I'm all on board for people understanding how to do it for sure. Just knowing they don't need to pull a rabbit out of the hat all day long on the golf course, that they can primarily play their normal shot shape.
Okay. In the interests of also touching a topic I wanted to talk about with you, which was the mindset shift from hitting balls to playing well on the course. I want to ask you, this is kind of like the shadow side of the point that you make. I'll throw a few names: Will Zalatoris, Rory McIlroy, right? They hit the golf ball and it's like, it's like you hear this eternal symphony, you hear this heavenly symphony, and the thing's high and climbing like a homesick angel, and you're like, my goodness gracious, there's no way I can compete. But the greats, because then you watch, last week I called Tom Kim, Doesn't hit
Yeah.
the thing like that. It's nice and straight and just does the thing all the time. He never gets wrapped up in them when he's playing alongside them.
Right.
That, to me, the discipline of that is very important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I actually saw that firsthand when I was playing college. As a walk on, I sort of felt a little inadequate at times about my skill set because I'm going up against these recruited, AJGA and, and touted players that have been handpicked by the coach. And I'm just here as a walk on. So that mentally, I had to learn to sort of put the blinders on the golf course. I actually played some of my best rounds when I didn't watch my playing competitors hit
Okay.
their shots,
Mm-hmm.
because it was too hard for me not to get caught up in that comparison of what do they do relative to me. I need to be able to hit the shots that they can hit, right? My stuff isn't good enough to get it done out here, type thing. And I had to battle that internal battle of, you made it on the team, you got out here, you deserve to be out here. The shots you play, if you just figured out how to play them better and got, made your game better incrementally, like you said, that tenth of a stroke, over the course of each round, there's nothing that's saying a low ball flight or a high ball flight is better. Of course, into par fives and maybe some firmer greens, high ball flight is more optimal, but that doesn't mean there's other
Yeah.
routes that can't be taken. And when I was at the WM Phoenix Open this past year, I stood behind the range and I just watched the line, and of course you got Rory, you got John Rahm, but also you have like Ches Reavie, and you had like Andrew Putnam
Yeah.
and some other players who don't hit it as high or as far, but they're still out there competing, making FedEx Cup championships, doing all these things, and there's no one way that's better than another. But it's hard to not do that comparison. But I found, for me personally, if I was falling into that trap, it'd be better if I didn't watch what my other playing competitors were doing.
That's an awesome take. And it's the one thing I'd say for folks, if you're driving, don't take notes for goodness sake. But if you're in the office, I love that. Don't watch your playing competitor or even your playing partner, really. It gets
Right.
you out of your mindset. All right. Along those lines, the second point you made was you like less emotional attachment to the outcome of each shot. So sort of lowering, all of that stuff that goes on inside one's soul after a goal, before or after a golf shot. I'm,
Right.
I'm interested for you to build on that, please.
Yeah. I think Dustin Johnson had a quote a little while ago. He said, I think in it when he was the best player in the world, and he's a great case study for this, but he said, I'm the best player in the world and I hit a lot of good shots, but I also hit a lot of bad shots. And it doesn't really make sense for me to get super high or super low when those shots occur, because I'm going to continue to hit good shots and I'm also going to continue to hit really bad shots. So it doesn't do me any good to ride that emotional roller coaster. And man, playing in pro-ams and playing with amateur golfers, it is mind-blowing to me the emotional highs and lows that players go through on a regular basis. And when you play with better players, more experienced players, I want to say, they're much more even keel. They're
Mhm.
much more flatline. They don't get high, they don't get low. They understand that if they hit a bad shot, they're still going to have to play another one on the next ball. So it doesn't really make sense to get too down on themselves or in a negative place, because it's not really going to influence their next shot positively, because it's going to affect their mindset, their process, their commitment to the shot, their routine. All of that is going to become affected. And I think just naturally over time, what I learned was it's kind of exhausting. You're out there for 4.5, 5 hours in a tournament. It's pretty exhausting to be that, beating yourself up all the time and then kind of like pumped after a good one. It didn't do me any good. So, one of my mentors, Jeff Costin, who you also had on the show at some point.
That boy's
Um,
high. He is high energy, man. Does he ever
yeah,
say anything negative? I don't think he does he?
no, I purposely try to go to dinner with him as much as I can when we're at tournaments, because I always take some positives away from, how he thinks about things. But yeah, he's incredible. But he has this thing taped to his wall in his teaching studio, uh, with the acronym NATO, NATO, not attached to the outcome. And I've always tried to embody that since I saw that on his wall, and I think it's just done me a world of good in competitive situations.
this is this you've done this as a competitor, you teach it as an instructor and a coach. Is that hard to do, not be attached to the outcome? Or is it something like, if you've said this and someone's listening to this going, yeah, man, I'm with you, Keith, I'm going to do this afternoon when I go and play. It's not as easy as you make it sound, or is it?
No, it's not as easy. This has taken me a lot of writing out affirmations, speaking it out loud in my own head, understanding why it's not healthy for me to ride the highs and lows on the course during competitive situations. It is a learned skill, and it's still something that I completely battle with. It's not like I'm, a robot now and I don't care about what happens to a shot. That's not the case at all. I think I've just acknowledged that doing it to an extent that it becomes destructive for my game is never going to get me where I want to go.
Yeah.
And I can do things physically that help, like making sure that my eyes aren't down on the ground, keeping my eyes at horizon level, walking with my chest a little bit taller, good posture. Kind of, I think of like how, Adam Scott, I like to embody how Adam or Rory walks when they're walking down the fairway, when they're playing well. And then, something that's helped me is I try to just put my golf club in my bag and just walk to the next shot without standing there and kind of ruminating on it too much. And so I've learned some physical skills and some mental skills that have helped me. But no, it's certainly not something that comes easy. It's something that requires daily maintenance.
And I'll tell you what, it takes work, but it'll be work that's it'll work. It'll be work that rewards, of that I'm sure. You speak of understanding, and your third point is the deeper understanding of course management.
Yes.
Now, you've mentioned giving course management lessons. I gave a lot. I've given a lot. Goodness gracious, when you see young, talented collegians, they show up and they can hit the thing great, but they do some dumb stuff that any sort of guy playing for a living with any sort of success will never ever do. But I'm keen to see what you have to say about the course management thing, because everyone can learn from that.
Yeah, I think there was one point. So I was lucky enough to play with Kevin Chappell at Aldera years ago, and I was hitting a shot, and I was laying up on a par 5, and he asked me, okay, why did you hit that shot there? And I was like, I didn't have a really great answer for him, to be honest. I was just probably trying to leave myself 100 yards in or something. It was a kind of a funky par 5. And he basically showed me that where I was laying it up was the most narrow part of the fairway, and I didn't even consider that at the time, and he just kind of pointed out that, like, yeah, you might be leaving yourself 100 yards in, but like if you missed that 7-iron layup or whatever it was by a couple yards either way, like, you were toast.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't even cross my mind. And sometimes ignorance is bliss in that regard, but that's not going to pan itself out over the course of a lifetime of being ignorant to what you're doing. And so that kind of got me thinking about the decisions I was making on the course. And then, maybe like a year later, another assistant at the course, Mark Mers, introduced me to Scott Fawcett's program, Decade Golf, and his course management program. And that changed my world completely with course management. And same with Mark Brody. Mark Brody was the godfather of all this sort of stuff. And he came up with the idea of shot dispersions, and you have to aim far enough away from an OB hazard to actually avoid the OB hazard. So that your worst shot doesn't actually end up in the hazard. I was actually just talking to an online student about this before we got on the podcast. He was asking me, how do you avoid OB? I said, the only way to avoid OB is to aim far enough away from it so that even your worst shot.
I want to stop. Okay, I want to stop you there. I have you have now ignited something within. I have gotten to talk to a number of really, really good golfers, right? And I played the game at a fairly high level. And when there was OB or water down the right, I would aim so far left, it would be ridiculous.
Yep.
Then I had he's a friend, but I was playing a match play game against Ernie Elster one day. And Ernie in South Africa was unbeatable. I happened to beat him that day somehow. It was like the lion lay next to the lamb the one time. And I was scrapping it around the place, and Ernie was hitting these freaking majestic things, and somehow I just outputted him, right? But on the one hole, I am way left. There's water down the right. He takes it over the edge of the water with a draw and turns it away. And I
Yeah,
remember asking him, I'm like, do you do that on purpose? And he goes, yeah, I always curve the ball away from the trouble.
right.
And I was like, you're crazy.
Yeah,
That's what I'm thinking. I didn't say that.
right,
So
right.
where do you stand on that? Because I'm with you. Shot
Yeah,
dispersions are real. You
yeah,
don't hit in one spot. But
right.
do you curve the ball away from trouble, going to your one shot thing, or do you just aim wide enough?
I used to. I've heard that I was passed that down. That was passed down to me by somebody. I can't remember who. Of like always curve the ball away from hazards. Um, but what would end up happening to me, and this is my own experience, I can't
Yeah.
speak for other people, was that I would wildly curve the ball away from the hazards. Like I'd be so petrified of not curving it enough that I would like over curve it and end up hitting poor shots.
Yes.
Uh, and so it wouldn't actually result in better distance or dispersion because I was more concerned about getting it away from the hazard than I was about, just the act of curving it away from the hazard. And I certainly don't have as much ball control as Ernie Els does. So, um, and I think what I found was if I just had a more conservative target, I could make a more confident swing. I wasn't making confident swings when I was aiming at the hazard and curving it away from it. Because in the back of my mind, if I was like, well, if I heel this a little bit trying to draw it, it's gonna push fade into that
Yeah,
water, and that's no
exactly.
good either.
You know what?
Right. So
That is such a
yeah,
wise take. That and that goes right back to your first point when it comes to lowering your stroke average. Is you kind of got to go with your shape that you do. Right? Trying to hit
right.
something just to turn it away from the hazard could turn out disastrous.
Yeah, and you're talking about altering your entire path and face kind of relationship for maybe two, maybe one particular shot around or one tee shot around. It's not like you've got had OBs on every side of every hole all day long, unless you're playing some bizarre golf course.
Mhm.
So I don't believe in like completely altering my approach just for one shot around. I could probably just plan out a better way to get around that one tee shot that I'm maybe uncomfortable with prior to actually stepping on the golf course. That's a whole different topic. Would be, nobody has a plan for their tee shots before they actually play golf, and they just react to what's in front of them. But that's a different topic. But yeah, so if I have a better plan for that one tee shot, it's really not that hard to execute.
Yeah. Hey, this is such good stuff. Man, there's a lot more. Well, I've got to scoot. Um, Playing away from my weaknesses. Uh,
Yeah,
this I want to tee you up by saying to this, and maybe this goes along with what you were talking about, having a plan for what you do. Every lesson I have with a student, it always starts with an assessment of who they are, what their strengths and weaknesses are, and so many folks, they want to improve their weakness to get
right,
better. But
right,
then they get so into that. And you see this on the PGA Tour, where someone starts to identify the fact that they need to get longer off the tee or whatever. So they work on
right.
that. And then the strength of their game, which might have been their wedge play, goes in the tank because their focus is directed elsewhere. So that's why I love
Correct.
this playing away from my weaknesses.
Yeah, I think I mean, it's something that took me a really long time to learn. I thought I needed to practice to the point where I had all of the shots, and I think it was somebody, a better player, who probably impressed upon me that you don't have to have all the shots. You just got to be really good in certain areas and play to those points. I mean, no better example comes to mind than Zach Johnson winning the Masters by
Yeah.
laying up on every par five and wedging it close and making birdie that way. And so that was a moment in time, and he was committed to it, and he understood what he was good at, and it all panned out, and he got himself a green jacket. And so for me, it probably also has to do with the fact that I don't have as much time to practice as I once did with with a family and a 9-month old and work teaching full time and doing a lot of other stuff. I just don't have the hours to grind on stuff. So I think I've had to acknowledge, hey, I'm maybe not good in this area. Like I'm not great from 60 to 50 yards. I'm just not good at it. And so I try not to leave myself those numbers that often. And I'm pretty terrible out of bunkers. So I try not to hit into bunkers as often as I can. Right. I mean, I actively avoid bunkers. And these are just some things, right? Like I was looking back and I was like, well, my scoring average is the best it's ever been, way better than college, way better than it's ever been. I don't practice as much. Like, what am I doing? I'm not hitting it into bunkers. I'm not leaving myself those wedge shots that I'm not comfortable with. I'm trying to hit one tee, one shape off the tee instead of trying to fade it and draw it based on the shape of the hole. And this playing away from my weaknesses point has been a big one for me personally. And just also when I'm standing over a shot I don't feel confident with, I try to avoid putting myself into situations like that on a regular basis, because I would rather be hitting shots in a confident frame of mind than in like a guessing or hoping frame of mind.
You are talking straight to the listener and the viewer right now, because look, most folks listening to this want to get better. I know that they're
Right.
they're a very informed audience, but I think the common denominator between everybody here, unless it's some professional, is that they're low on time. Time is a commodity that not everybody has because of work,
For
families,
sure.
that sort of stuff. So that's why I loved your take here, is that there are ways to get around this, that you can still lower your score without going to grind on the range and not play golf. Because unless you VJ Singh or my brother or someone who just likes to hit balls all day long,
Right.
golf is about the playing of it and the enjoyment of it. All right,
Absolutely.
one more or two of them, and they sort of go hand in hand. So in the
Yep.
interest of
Oh yeah.
time, I'm gonna blend them. You said not trying to force the issue when I'm clearly out of position. I'll say that again, folks. Not trying to force the issue when you're out of position, and then loving an easy string of pars.
Yes.
Now, for the let's say the bogey golfers in the crowd listening, or maybe worse, 4 or 5, 6 bogeys in a row, just taking those big numbers off the card. Go.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think the first one, not trying to force the issue when I'm clearly out of position, took me a long time to learn. And actually, Scott Fawcett's program, Decade Golf, was huge instrumental in teaching me that, but also understanding the strokes gain statistics. So, like, as soon as you hit it in the woods, basically you're going to expect to make a bogey or worse on the hole. It just is what it is. On average, as soon as you hit it in the woods, you're going to make bogey or worse. And I was always trying to make par or better once I hit it into the woods. So I was trying to hit it through the little gap in the trees, or punch it up through a little opening to get to the front of the green so I could get up and down more easily. And more often than not, I was hitting a tree on my, shot trying to exit the trees, or I was, just not executing that shot and making bogey or worse. And I always look back on that round and I go, man, that could have just been a bogey, or I could have chipped it out, hit a wedge, and had a putt for par. And maybe I would have made that par putt and the round would have looked a lot different. And so I don't even, unless the opening in the trees or the lie in the rough, the tall grass is such that it's like glaringly obvious that I can execute the riskier shot, I don't even really consider it anymore. I just kind of chip out sideways to make sure I get back in play. I hit my second shot or the third shot as close to the green or on the green, and then I play from there. Because what I found was, and again, this comes back to that point of not stressing myself out as much during a round, or just playing shots, with less stress on the line. The chip out is a much easier shot than like being tense over the ball and trying to thread it through a small opening. And I
Mhm.
think that all leads itself into this 4.5, 5 hour experience on the golf course of what frame of mind can I stay in? Can I be more relaxed and more calm and more confident? I think I will probably be on my third shot, from the fairway after I've chipped out, than the third shot from behind a tree after I've just clanked off a few branches and now I'm, back to where I once was. So,
Yeah.
and then that falls into that loving an easy string of pars, or for bogey golfers, loving an easy string of bogeys. I used to beat myself up if I didn't par what I considered to, or a birdie, what I considered to be a birdieable par five or a
Yeah.
reachable par
Hmm.
five. But now I don't even really consider it, because I understand that, hey, I could have a string of birdies on the last 3 holes, and all of a sudden my round tastes a lot different than if I started off birdie, birdie, birdie. So I let the round play out and just kind of reflect on it after I'm done playing now, versus, trying to manufacture a score during a round or something along those lines.
I love that, and it reminds me of a story or something my dad told me. And my dad was a good athlete, but never a good golfer. Somehow he produced 2 sons that were pretty good. Um, and he used to get frustrated with me because I'm the older of the two of us, and he'd always say to me, make pars, let the birdies come. And I'd be like,
Yes.
Dad, you don't know what you're talking about. But
Right.
now that I have 20, I don't know, 30 years of golf teaching wisdom somehow behind me, I see that, because you're going along, and now with the benefit of Lou Stagner's work and Mark Brody and all those sorts of guys, they're proving
Yep.
to you that these PGA Tour guys don't make bushels of birdies. They're averaging,
No.
3.75, maybe 4 if they're
Right.
good around.
Yeah.
And then we're expecting more. So, just knocking them off, just making par and par, or bogey and bogey and bogey, and
Yep.
lowering your score that way. That's how you
Yes.
consistently lower that handicap. Because if you're cruising along and all of a sudden you're like, well, dang, I should make a birdie, and you suddenly force the issue and you suddenly short side yourself or whatever, and then you make double, that whole apple cart is upset.
Yeah. And I think, if you were to boil all of these talking points down, it'd be like, just playing the shot in front of you and not being in the past or the present, or being in the present, but not in the past or the future.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm trying to force a birdie, that means I'm in the future. I'm trying to make something happen that hasn't even happened yet. So I might miss, something that's right in front of me because I'm already thinking about an outcome that I want 5 minutes from now than, what's happening down in front of my feet with the lie and the wind and the this and the that. So I think that has a lot to do with it as well. But yeah, to your point, it was astounding. I think everybody should do this, is to go on like the PGAtour.com website
Yeah.
and look at the statistics. Like, look up a statistic that you think you're inadequate at and look at the stats. And I promise you that the tour pros aren't performing to the level that you think they are. And therefore, like, your own expectations will adjust. Cause yeah, I mean, somebody who makes 4.5 birdies for the year per round is like, that's the best you're going to see.
Mm-hmm.
And I was trying to make 5. I thought I had to make like 5 or 6, back when I was younger, and I ended up making none and making a bunch of doubles. And it's like, well, that's this isn't working. So yeah, it's patience, and it's loving those easy string of stress-free par, two putt, little quick tap in pars. There's nothing better.
Hey, I'll cap it with this. John Wood, who I think is a tremendous on-course announcer, he's a
It's incredible.
retired PGA Tour caddy, came on this podcast, and I said to him, Woody, I love you guys. When you were on course and I was the microphone in hand, because I knew if you were there, I could just lay out and you guys were going to tell me exactly what was going on. And he
Right.
laughed and he said to me, go listen, folks, if you haven't heard it. He said, well, funny enough, now I'm waiting for the caddies to say something so I can shut up. And I said
Yeah.
to him, yeah, and the one thing you caddies do is you are infinitely positive. You're never going to give your professional bad stuff. You're going to be the happiest guy in the world for 5 hours. And then I'm like, in every call you make, you'll cap it with, and right at the TV tower after he's got the number, because that's right at the middle of the green. And if he misses, he's putting. And so what you're saying is exactly what Woody was saying, just in a different way. And what you say is so insightful.
Yeah, and I, again, I didn't learn any of this stuff on my own. I've been very fortunate to learn from a lot of smart people. Like, again, come back to your podcast and the guests you've had on. I mean, I can't stress how much information I've gleaned in in the modern era of podcasting and information dissemination out there, of how quickly I've been able to learn and absorb this stuff and then spend time applying it to my own game. Because my last bullet point on that story was, I've just simply played a lot of competitive rounds at this point. Because even though all these bullet points sound really good and okay, I can apply this stuff, it sounds great on paper, but until you take the time to apply it and learn it and figure out how it works for you, it's hard to really embody these things like I have started to recently. This has been like probably an 8-year expedition to get me to this point. And so it's not like this, oh, I've heard it one time, now I can call upon this stuff whenever. No, I mean, it takes a long time, but yeah, it's great to have all these, great sources of information to learn from now, and hopefully I can continue to pass it on.
Well, look, what you brought us, Keith, was tremendous, so insightful. You've got 116,000 plus followers on Instagram. So I'm sure a lot of the folks listening to this have followed you. But if they aren't, I need you to please share the handles and also share the website where they can find you.
Yeah, no, it's been really cool to have the Instagram grow to the community that it is now. But you can follow me on Instagram at Keith Bennett Golf. I'm the same on TikTok. And then my website, www.keithbennettgolf.com, is where you can go if you want to take an in-person lesson or virtual lessons.
And you're on Skillest, the app as well, right?
Yes. I'm on Skillest, the app. That's where I do all my virtual lessons. So you can download the Skillest app and search for me under the coaches section. If you want to just send me a message to ask how the online stuff works, or if you want to get started with some online lessons. It's really cool how they've built it. We can do live Zoom lessons. We can chat in the text thread. We can talk about course management or talk about, golf swing, whatever topic they should desire.
You're doing great work, man. I'm so glad you would join us. Thanks for your time.
Yeah, Mark, like I said, thank you for the contribution you've given the golf community with all this awesome information. I know I've personally benefited tons from it. So it's an absolute honor to be on the show.